I don't think that most kids would speak up in this situation. They would have laid in that bed uncomfortable the entire night.
Joe and Serena Wailes, you're the parents of a 6th grader, an 11-year-old, who was recently involved in an incident that might be many parents' nightmare. Serena, we'll start with you. What was this school trip that you were on?
We signed up for this trip about 18 months before we went on it, and it was a district-sponsored trip to Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. The kids had just learned about the birthplace of our great country, and so it was a chance for them to go back and see some of the wonderful sites that created it. We planned this trip for a while. We woke up at 1:30 that morning in order to go to the airport and get there. We spent the afternoon at Valley Forge and then spent the evening in Philadelphia. Our daughter was very adamant. She knew she had 2 roommates in her room that were going to be from her school and 1 roommate that was going to be outside of her school that she didn't know prior to the trip. And so she really wanted to make that student feel comfortable. So she went out of her way to say, I'll be her bedmate. We'll ride the bus. We'll have lunch together that day. That's just how she, wanted to go about this. She had made up her mind before the trip. And so when she was in her room that night, just before going to bed, and this other student, there was 3 of them sitting on the bed talking, and they were sharing information about themselves. And that's when this other student, who was going to be her bedmate, informed her that she was transgender and born a boy.
So your daughter, how did she react to that?
So it made her very uncomfortable to realize that she would be sharing a bed with a biological boy. She went into the bathroom. I was down in the lobby at that point. I was on the trip. I was not a chaperone. Our daughter's 11. I didn't feel like she needed to be cross country without one of us present, just because they're still so young. And she called me. Her voice was quivering. She was very uncomfortable. She was nervous and she was scared. She didn't want to make any of the other kids feel uncomfortable. So I think that's why she was in the bathroom. And she said, "Mom, I've got something to tell you. My bedmate just informed me that he's a boy." So at that point I was in disbelief, and I said, "Why don't you come down and share with me exactly what happened?" So she came down, we discussed it. I called her chaperone over and I had her tell the story again. And at that point, the chaperone reached out to the director of the tour, and he called the parents and confirmed that was actually the case. The parents said that they were shocked that their child did that because their plan was for him to operate in stealth mode over the trip.
What was your thought when you heard this news?
My initial reaction was to take the trip, to have them come home. But my daughter had worked hard for the trip. She'd been doing lemonade stands, doing things to get ready. She was excited about it. Like Serena said, they planned it for 18 months. So just taking it away from her, we didn't feel like that was fair to her. And again, she wasn't in the wrong. She just found this out when she got there. It is helpless feeling. Your daughter's scared in a bathroom calling you from 2,000 miles away. There's nothing I can do. I can't even, even if she was local, it'd be bad, but at least I could get in a car and drive. But the best case scenario would have been taking me a day and a half to get there. So,
right.
What are you gonna do? So, thankfully, Serena was on the trip, which is, I don't know how it would have played out had Serena not been on the trip.
So originally they were planning to have her move into the other bed and say that she needed to be in that bed to be near the air conditioning because she was hot. But at that point, the other girl that she was going to now be sharing a bed with said to the other student, "Would you like to still share a bed with our daughter?"
The letter that you sent to the school district requesting more clarification on this matter mentions that the parents of this boy who identifies as a girl said he was in stealth mode. My understanding means that the parents had told the school district that he was a boy who identifies as a girl, but no one else knew.
That's what we'd assumed too. We know that the chaperones on the trip, we don't feel like they knew. They were part of our school, but we would assume at a district level somebody within the system realized what was going on and this stealth mode operation was happening.
And you were there. You saw this boy. He was sharing a room with your daughter. Did he appear or present as a young girl?
I would say he dressed like a girl, but they're 11 years old, so there's not a lot of them haven't developed. Their body hasn't developed yet. Their voices haven't developed yet. So I wouldn't claim one way or another just based on dress. Yes, dressed like a female for sure.
He presented as a little girl, basically.
Correct.
What was your daughter's reaction to finding this out? She called you. What did she tell you? How did she feel?
She just said, "Mom, I found something out that I'm not comfortable with," and kind of told me, I said that her bedmate had just shared that she was a boy who identified as a girl, and that she was uncomfortable with sharing a bed at that point.
So your daughter is 11 years old. What made her comfortable speaking up about this? I mean, I imagine that this was a very scary thing for her to do.
I think it's because I was there, and we have created an environment in our family where we want them to talk to us about things. But I'm not sure that she felt comfortable doing so even in that environment. I don't know that she felt comfortable talking to the chaperone about it. I don't think she felt comfortable talking about it. You know, she's 11. They're in elementary school, so they're trying to fit in. They're trying to get along. They're just kids. And so I don't think that most kids would speak up in this situation. In fact, I know I've talked to a lot of my mom friends about this since we've come back, and all of them have said, I don't think my child would have spoken up. They would have laid in that bed uncomfortable the entire night. They didn't want to go against the authority. They wouldn't want to make their friends uncomfortable. And so why are we putting our children in these kind of environments? These are adult situations, not children's situations.
So why do you think she spoke up at all?
I hope it's because we taught her that she needs to stand up for what she's not comfortable with. You know, advocate for yourself, and you know, believe in your values and stand up for yourself. So hopefully that's coming through. I felt very good that she did that on that trip. Very proud of her for that.
She came down to the lobby, you sorted this out, you talked to the chaperones. Were you happy with how they handled it?
I think people were just trying to handle it the best they could. It was a long day, and we just wanted to make, you know, everybody comfortable, but we weren't allowed to say anything because the policy doesn't allow us to disclose any of the details about what was happening. So we were kind of operating, you know, in a way where it felt like a lie. Like, you know, first she had to go into a different bed because of the air conditioning, and then that became uncomfortable. And so then they ended up moving the transgender child and another child into a different room. But then again, all of the other kids and the chaperones on the trip and moms are going, well, why did they move? Why did they move? And we're having to say, oh, you know, because a student was sick and they needed to get some separation between the kids and stuff like that. So it felt very uncomfortable having to go through that. But that's what the policy required, and that's what we were asked to do, and that's what the chaperones and the teachers and everybody was asked to do as well because of the policy.
So you discovered that this was going on and you couldn't even speak to the other parents on the trip about it?
Correct.
Wow, so that must have been incredibly frustrating for you.
It's very frustrating because I'm emotionally going through something. My daughter's emotionally going through something. My husband's 2,000 miles away, and we're just trying to navigate this in the spur of the moment. We had no preparation. You know, how do you parent something like this?
Right.
That's the question. I called my mom that night and I said, Mom, how do you parent this? I don't even know, you know?
Well, it's not something that I think most parents are prepared to handle, having their
Correct.
daughter call them from the bathroom of a hotel room and say, Mommy, there's a boy in my bed.
Right.
Now, what was the resolution that night?
So she was in the room with the girl who was sick, and the transgender child and another girl moved down to another room. And it is my understanding that the tour director called to the parents of the other girl who was the roommate and made sure that that was okay, that they shared a room together.
Okay.
But they were not in a bed together.
So you left the trip. What were your thoughts?
I do want to say we ended up having a great trip. One of the things I wanted our daughter to understand is like, yes, things happen. We'll deal with this when we get home. But let's like really take in what we're here for and experience all of the sights and the great, amazing birthplace of this country. But when we got home, we were discussing things, and we just felt like something had to happen. Like we had to speak up, and it was almost like our calling to do so. And so we reached out to Alliance Defending Freedom, and they said, well, can you tell us more about your story? And so we typed it all up and ran it through our daughter. She's been a part of this whole process so that she feels comfortable with what we're doing, and shared it with them. And they finally found the school district policy and realized that it goes against our rights as parents, that we should have had the right to know what our daughter was being, the situation that our daughter was being put in, and made a decision that was best for us ahead of time. We could have made different sleeping arrangements. We could have, there could have been a lot of different things that could have happened. Had we known, we could have made some other arrangements or had some options to follow through with.
Now, Joe, maybe you can share for us, was it scary to decide to basically go public with what happened?
Yeah, it was, we weren't sure how it was going to go. We wanted to make sure we approached it the right way, because, she did get moved out of the bed fairly quick. She didn't actually have to sleep in the bed with a transgender boy. So we really want to make sure that we were finding a way that we feel like this needs to change. So we want to make sure we were going about this in a way that could affect change.
Right.
Again, this happened in June, and the letter just went out in, I guess, late November.
Mm-hmm.
So we spent a lot of time working with ADF, trying to approach this in a reasoned way that can actually affect change to the district and hopefully to other areas, because we've gotten a lot of feedback from other parents. We've had people thanking us for doing this, saying they've had similar situations and they didn't know what to do. Our initial reaction, like I said, my reaction was just to yank them home and,
right,
let it go and be done with it. And then, there was anger issues. We were like, okay, maybe we need to go just get on the news and make a bunch of noise. And then we felt like we would have just been a soundbite.
right.
So I think the way it went through has been very reasoned. I will say the last 2 weeks was a bit overwhelming. We were not expecting the response the story has gotten. But to me, that's pretty telling that this is, the way things are being handled today are not right. We do realize all kids need to have respect and privacy, but that needs to be, equally across the board. All kids need that, not just one segment of kids.
Now, I had the privilege of meeting your daughter a little earlier. She's a charming young lady. What has her response been to the publicity of this?
We couldn't be more proud of the kind person that she's becoming and that she is. And I think she kind of recognizes and is proud of what we're doing, because I think she recognizes that we're doing it for her and for our other 2 kids, but we're also doing it because other kids deserve that as well. And so you want to teach your kids to stand up for your values, and that's what we're trying to do here. So.
And there's other parents watching this who are going to say, this happened to me, or this is happening to my friend's daughter. What's your message to those people watching this thinking, should I speak up?
Getting somebody who can help you, guide you through that, can hopefully take an experience that was pretty uncomfortable and hopefully turn it into something that's good.
We have had people reach out that these kind of things are happening, like he said, in outdoor lab, which is the 6th grade trip. Mm-hmm. And some of the things that are concerning about that is kids can't call their parents because they lose their cell phone privilege. It's supposed to be an outdoor experience. And so, what about those kids in those situations? These policies that these districts are putting into place, they're looking, and I understand they're trying to protect certain children, but they're not really realizing how it affects other children.
Now, there are certainly critics who will say, oh, this is hateful, it's transphobic, how could you say this, how could you out this child? What's your response to that?
My response is, we're not outing the child, for one, and 2, if they didn't operate in stealth mode for 18 months, we wouldn't be sitting here.
Had we known and had we been given the privilege to have the information ahead of time, we could have made decisions differently, but we were not given that courtesy. So
what do you want to leave this situation with? What are you trying to learn from the school district?
What we've asked the school district to do is to clarify the policy, because there's some ambiguity in the wording. And the other thing we were looking for Jefferson County to do is to give parents the opportunity to opt out of that policy, which doesn't mean you have to out anybody, doesn't mean you have to give up anybody's right to privacy. Just give parents that aren't comfortable with their child potentially rooming with a transgender person the opportunity to opt out. And I'm sure there's ways to do that. I know the attorneys at ADF have some ideas that I'm sure they'd be more than happy to help do that. So that's really what we want, is the opportunity to opt out.
Question might seem silly to you guys, especially after all you've been through, but there are people who have asked it. Why is it inappropriate for your daughter to share a bed with a boy?
First of all, they just went through growing and changing in 5th grade, so they understand the difference biologically between boy bodies and girl bodies. And I think it just goes back to her comfort level and feeling comfortable in that environment and not feeling comfortable in that environment. And because she wasn't comfortable, that feeling should be respected as well. Her privacy and her security should all be taken into account, as every child should.
Right, right. Well, is there any other message that you want to convey? You know, you two are at the forefront of this. You've been thrust into the culture wars, whether you want to or not. What do you want people to know about your situation?
I want to let people know that we love our school. We do want to support public schools because everybody says just go private. But we feel like we want to support our public schools, and we love our teachers. We love our principal at our school. We love our school right now. But this is a district issue, and we also feel like this puts our teachers and our principals and our schools in a situation to having to deal with these on a case-by-case basis that they shouldn't be in either. And so the district policy is what needs to be changed here. It needs to be transparent, it needs to protect all kids, and it needs to give all parents the rights to be able to do what they think is best for their kids.
All right. Any thoughts from you, Joe?
Yeah, you mentioned the culture wars, and yeah, that's the last place we ever thought we'd find ourselves. But you know, we've talked about it some. Serena was concerned about some of these gender issues as we were getting ready for our daughter to go into middle school, and we were discussing different things. And I would tell her, I was like, honey, you're making a big deal out of nothing. This is some soundbite on a news program to get a bunch of attention. It's like, I just didn't frankly believe it was happening anywhere near as much as it is. And since this has happened, and the last few weeks, we've gotten a lot of publicity from it. The people reaching out, the stories we're starting to hear, it is a very real phenomenon. I'm not going to claim to one side or the other that I know why it's happening, I know what's driving it, but I do think a lot of people just need to, you know, they're frustrated with what they're hearing. It's time to stand up and say enough's enough at some point. So, and I think that's why we're here. Like I said, I never would have imagined 6 months ago that we'd be sitting here, but here we are.
Well, thank you, Joe and Serena. We're so grateful that you were brave enough to speak up and share your story, and I have a feeling a lot of other people are going to be inspired by it to do the same.
Thank you, Mary
Thank you very
Margaret.
much.